So today we are going to be studying in the workbook, Jesus Starts His Third Year in Ministry. And we are now going to be doing this chapter 2, which is the death of John the Baptist. And it is interesting that this gets inserted right here as like a side story. But basically, if you think about it, Jesus sent the 12 off for their missionary journey. And this kind of fills the gap, because when this is done and this information is needed for the next story or the third story, I'm not sure which one after, this story is needed. So they insert it to help understand what's going to happen later. So that's why this is inserted here. But the apostles are all off on their mission. So they come back shortly after the story is finished too. So it's kind of like, meanwhile, this is happening type thing. John the Baptist, if you remember, is in prison. If you remember, John had sent his disciples to ask questions of Jesus, perhaps to be more fully understand that Jesus is the Messiah. For John the Baptist knew as Jesus increased, the ministry of John would decrease. So now we're going to read about the death of John the Baptist. Now we'll have a side story, but it will all connect later.
Now King Herod heard of him, for his name had become well known.
Now, who exactly is King Herod? And I've kind of given you a family tree here on the side. The Herod in this story is Herod Antipas, son of Herod the Great, who ruled Galilee and Perea for 4 BC to 39 AD. The family members of Herod the Great are prominent throughout the Bible, from the birth of Christ to the trial of Paul. So you see all the different characters, and we will be actually talking in this chapter about Herod Antipas, Philip, Herodias, and probably her daughter from Philip, which was Salome or something. Anyway, so that's we're talking about Herod Antipas right now. So who is King Herod? Who did King Herod hear of?
Jesus.
Right. Which Herod is this?
Antipas.
Where did Herod rule?
Galilee and Perea.
Perea, yeah. Perea, yeah.
Perea.
Our story will include 3 other members of the Herod family line, one that isn't listed here. How is Philip related to this Herod?
Brother.
Right. How is Herodias related to this Herod?
Niece.
Right. That is correct. Herodias is also Philip's wife.
Yeah. Family trees always confuse me.
Well, but they're also there so that you can understand why everybody's connected.
Yeah, that's good. Because the names. And he, King Herod, said, John the Baptist is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him. Others said it is Elijah, and others said it is a prophet, or like one of the prophets. But when Herod heard, he said, this is John, whom I beheaded. He has been raised from the dead.
So who did King Herod think Jesus was?
John the Baptist.
King Herod thinks this of Jesus because of what ability does Jesus have?
Raised from the dead.
Yeah. See. Other advisors around King Herod had a different opinion of who Jesus was. What 3 suggestions did they make?
Elijah, prophet, and one of the prophets.
Right. How did King Herod kill John the Baptist?
Beheaded.
Right. Why did King Herod kill John the Baptist? We are just about to find out.
Yeah, why?
Mm-hmm.
For Herod himself had sent and laid hold of John and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her, because John had said to Herod, it is not your lawful for you to have your brother's wife.
Right. For whose sake did King Herod have John the Baptist bound in prison?
Herodias.
Yeah, Herodias. Yeah.
Herodias.
Who had Herodias been married to?
Philip's wife.
She was Philip's wife, yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, Herod Antipas was married to Aretha,
Yeah,
right,
brother.
the daughter of the Nabatean king, and Herodias was the wife of Philip, Herod Antipas's brother. When Herod Antipas went to Rome, he fell in love with Herodias and persuaded her to leave Philip. In order for her to become Herod Antipas's wife, she had to divorce Philip, and Herod Antipas also had to divorce Aretha. What was John the Baptist's objection to King Herod marrying Herodias?
Impurity. It's not lawful to have your brother's wife.
Right. But remember, this is only if his brother is still alive. Because remember, kinsman redeemer means that you do marry your brother's wife, but that's
Yeah.
when your brother dies. If your
Yeah.
brother's still alive, you don't marry his wife.
Yeah.
Other than being his brother's wife, Herodias is related to Herod Antipas another way. What is that?
The niece.
Right. Did John the Baptist do anything wrong by telling Herod it was unlawful to marry his brother's wife?
No.
No, other than he spoke out and you should know what's going to happen, but maybe he did.
Yeah. Brave soul. Okay. Therefore, Herodias held it against him, John the Baptist, and wanted to kill him, but she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just and holy man, and he protected him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly.
Okay, so we do have a Bible discrepancy, which we'll get to here shortly. In this passage, who was mad at John the Baptist?
Herodias.
In this passage, what did Herod Antipas do concerning John the Baptist?
Feared John.
Right, and protected him and listened to him, right?
Yeah.
So we have a scripture discrepancy here. Matthew writes 14:5, Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people because they considered John a prophet. And yet we have here in Mark where Herod often went down to talk to John. And so it didn't seem like he was afraid of him, but he considered him a just and holy man. So you see two different, almost opposites here. And of course, the scripture cannot be wrong. So if the scripture is never wrong, how would you explain this difference? Can both be true? Since the story is written by two different eyewitnesses, could that help?
Yes.
Yeah, basically that's true. We've got it from Matthew and Mark. Okay, so Matthew probably was there, and Matthew, he might have had more of an affinity for John the Baptist than Mark did. Mark comes later in the scripture. He's not an apostle. So Matthew probably had a more of a personal love for John the Baptist, so blames Herod for this killing. Mark was originally a Pharisee, if you remember, and he becomes a apostle later during the book of Acts. And so he may know some more of the story. So he may know the inner workings a little more than Mark did, than Matthew did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's their way. They both saw it from their viewpoint. Why did Herodias want John killed?
He found fault with her marriage with Herod Antipas.
Right. When you're rich, you think you can get away with anything.
Yeah. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guest.
The daughter to Herodias is probably named Salome, or Salam, whatever, however you want to say that. And Salam's father would have been Philip, Herod Antipas's brother. So she was old enough to dance. And so she put on quite a dance. Could have been quite sexual too in that time. What was the banquet for?
His birthday.
What groups of men were invited in the banquet?
High officials, military commanders, and leading men of Galilee.
What did the daughter of Herodias do for Herod and his guests?
Danced.
Did the men enjoy her dance?
Yes. The king said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want, and I'll give it to you." And he promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered. At once the girl hurried in to the king with the request, "I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter."
So there's no
Gross.
getting out of this.
That's gross. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no getting
Yeah.
out of this. You know, in order to save face in front of his officials,
Yeah.
there's nothing he can do. Because he's
Yeah.
promised her up to half the kingdom. Surely the head of a traitor is no big deal. What did King Herod offer with an oath?
Whatever you ask for, up to one half my kingdom.
Right. Who did Salome ask regarding King Herod's offer?
Asked her mother, what should I ask for?
What did her mother tell Salome to ask for?
John the Baptist's head.
Right. Notice the timing in the last sentence. When is the death of John the Baptist to happen?
Right now during the banquet.
Right. Herodias timed this request very well. Who's at the banquet again?
High officials, military commanders, leading men of Galilee.
If Herod did not give what Salome requested, what would the guests think?
The people would disrespect him.
Right. Yeah, you got to be careful what you promise.
The king was greatly distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he did not want to refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went, beheaded John in the prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and she gave it to her mother.
Wonderful. Why couldn't the king refuse Salome's request?
Because of his oath.
Right. How did John the Baptist die?
Beheaded.
Yeah. Was it done immediately?
Yes.
Who did the executioner bring the head of the John the Baptist to?
The girl.
Salome.
Yeah, Salome.
Who did Salome give the head to?
Her mother.
Right. So who is really responsible for the death of John the Baptist? Herod Antipas, Herodias, Herodias's daughter, the executioner, the dinner guests, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Right. Right. The dinner guests could have said, "Now wait a second."
Yeah, I don't want to see that. No.
Yeah.
John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. They then went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick.
Now, we are going to stop here today, but keep this in mind when we follow through in the next capital chapters, because they all happen on the same day. So,
Wow.
Who took John's body away?
John's disciples.
Note that although many of John's disciples transferred over to Jesus when John indicated that Jesus was the Messiah, others stayed with John. After burying John's body, where did his disciples go?
They went to tell Jesus.
What did Jesus do in response to hearing of John's death?
He went to a solitary place.
Was Jesus ever able to get to that solitary place?
Yes.
Actually, he didn't. When he landed, he was gonna he took a boat and he was gonna land, but there was such a huge crowd there, he hadn't ever gotten to a solitary place, which will show up later.
Oh.
Who followed on the shore to where he landed?
Crowds.
What did Jesus feel and do with the crowd that followed him?
Compassion on them and healed them.
Right. Notice this happens the same day as the next story. Jesus only gets a true chance to mourn his relative and close friend, John the Baptist, after the next story, which we'll do next time.
Wow. Perfect timing.
Yeah. So, cross 1. The daughter of Herodias asked for
Head
of John the Baptist. Should be the head, but sorry. Okay, 4. What did Herod give that guests were invited to on his birthday?
banquet.
Right. And 5, who did John the Baptist's disciples go see after burying John's body?
Jesus,
Okay, 8, who was married to Philip and later married to Herod Antipas?
Her- Herodias,
There you go. 11, the head of John the Baptist was brought in on a,
platter,
okay, 2 down. What did Herodias's daughter do for Herod during his banquet?
dance,
And 3 down. How was John the Baptist killed?
beheaded,
6, who was Herod Antipas's brother that was married to Herodias?
Philip,
And 7, Herod had put John the Baptist where due to John's opposition to his new marriage?
prison,
9, what was King Herod's second name?
Antipas,
And 10, what is probably Herodias's daughter's name?
Salama or Salami.
Yeah, yeah. So, and so that's where we're going to end today. A very fascinating story, but again, this plays into the next couple of stories. So that's why it was inserted here. So anyway, let me go ahead and stop the recording.